again, the whole Debbie Harry, I've said this word several times here, but the whole Debbie Harry energy is like disaster prom. You know, prom, right?
Yeah.
Or like a prom in a B movie that gets invaded by giant ants or something, you know?
Yes.
Which is
Tales from the
cool.
Deep. Yeah.
And kind of an eternal aesthetic, even though that fits very well with that like cramps late 70s, like punk, like creep reimagining of idyllic 50s.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But also lasts forever. Disaster prom is something that goes on for every teen era. Yeah. You know what else would fit that aesthetic today?
Mm-hmm.
Euphoria.
Euphoria is very disaster prom. Riverdale's disaster prom.
Did I coin an aesthetic there?
The entire Maybe. CW is basically disaster prom.
Yeah,
that's good. I like that. So yeah, Blondie's killing it. Hits after hits. Meanwhile, she's just participating in all of these absolutely iconic items of late 70s, early 80s New York culture. She gets involved with her friend Glenn O'Brien's TV party, which is like
TV party.
I don't know if our listeners would know about this public access show in New York City where you could basically just do whatever the fuck you wanted. So you had like Basquiat doing graffiti like on a green screen or something, and weirdos being brought in to be interviewed, drag queens and Andy Warhol and all this bullshit, like just like media chaos.
Yes.
So, Debbie is involved in that.
Molly said this to me beforehand, but, we've been doing these music video live streams, and I think that a good thing to aim for would be trying to make it a TV party.
Modern day TV party. Well,
so hopefully once we can talk to people again, and maybe even before that, we'll have some interesting guests on and try to do some chaos streaming.
I watched a few years ago a documentary about... kind of like the no wave movement. I think it's called was it called Blank Generation? I don't know what the fuck it's called. It's about just like that whole aesthetic and vibe of like TV party, graffiti, people making movies who did not know how to make a movie, like Amos Poe, like all that shit. And that was one of the first things I was just like, oh, that's cool. Like that DIY, that's like, doesn't die with each generation. You just get new tools to do it with.
Yes.
Like they just had Super 8 cameras and public access, and like now we got Twitch.
Yes.
We should be grateful.
We should be. Now everyone can be their own public access performer.
Also, I mean, to that extent, this is probably, it's kind of like a boomery sentiment, but it's what I vibed the most with in this book, is Debbie saying today it's all about being famous, but in those days it was about making something happen.
Yes.
And I was like, hell yeah, Debbie.
I mean,
you are so right.
Yeah, I mean, everything, making something happen versus
making
being
something happen versus just
famous.
Being.
Yes.
That's where, I mean, my biggest like the thing I get so upset about in influencer culture, which Fiona Apple on her latest album called out as, I'm upset that you're presenting your life like a fucking propaganda brochure, is that everyone is obsessed with being and no one is obsessed with doing. I like to do. I like to make. The idea of just like putting yourself out as an identity and not as like someone who can create stuff bothers me. I feel like Debbie vibes with that.
Yes. And what I was going to add is like, and then the sad thing that you see as the dissociative thing from that is that now everybody has to operate themselves as a individual brand.
Yes, it's not enough to make things. You have to be the person who
you have to
makes
be the single thing.
Yes,
that is like some kind of totalizing thing, and almost nobody, especially like new up and coming singers and rappers and stuff. Mm-hmm. Very few people are like. Maybe the last thing from that was like maybe the Odd Future crew or something. Was like, oh, that's a crew that's like working together to make something collaborative.
Yeah,
there is something very like.
But then
chaotic.
you have Brockhampton, who admittedly, like, I love Brockhampton's music, but I'm aware of them as they are the brand called Brockhampton. I think before they are a band called Brockhampton. They have graphic designers in the band. Come on.
I mean, but that's very factory-ish.
And I mean they are making things. I should say that too.
Obviously, it's like refracted through an era of personal branding exercise, but having a graphic designer in your band is very Andy Warhol-ish.
That is very Andy Warhol. And I'm just thinking if like Andy Warhol is someone who encouraged being, like most of his superstars were people who just were.
Yeah.
He would put them in movies or like
But
he
that
would
wasn't
take
like a
pictures
thing.
of
It was
them,
like,
but mostly they existed as what Debbie Harry would say is living art. You were
Yeah.
living
Living
art, which now influencers, are they
You
living
have
art?
the look. You should be in one of my movies. Every impression I've heard of Andy Warhol is that he was extremely soft-spoken.
Yes.
I want to make a movie that's just the Empire State Building.
But then it gradually dissolves into a huge penis to represent the phallic nature of New York City.
I want to put you in a film where you eat a cheeseburger while a man sucks your cock off screen. Would you be interested in that?
You know who is the OG influencer? Edie fucking Sedgwick.
Yes.
Edie Sedgwick didn't do anything. She just bead. She danced.
She bead, she
danced.
danced.
She was.
Were people as mad at Edie Sedgwick in the 60s and 70s as they are at Kim Kardashian now?
It wasn't proliferated in the same way. I think you asked, Ann Flanderson in Wisconsin of like what she thinks of Edie Sedgwick, and she would have been like, who? She would have been a who to most people.
Yes.
But I think it would have been
Transcending Edie Sedgwick from who to them is like the miracle of
social media.
Of social media. And
so
the Kardashians.
Edie Sedgwick would be like a sloppy bitch on Instagram if she existed now. Like she would be.
All those people were incredibly sloppy.
Yeah. She would be doing like drugged up Instagram lives, being like just like talking bullshit. Anyway, this is all to say. I don't know what it's all to say. Other than I agree, like Debbie Harry talking about, it wasn't just a bunch of people hanging out trying to do like just like enhance their brands.
Mm-hmm.
There was not branding really. And most people were kind of
until you got like a
resistant to
record
brand.
contract, by which point you'd already made it.
Yeah, and even that, then you were probably chafing under that branding. But
No hits? Have you heard Heart of Glass? Come on.
there's a few people that I continue to follow on Instagram who I think are less interested in doing something than in just being the person who could do that thing. And it's very frustrating to see. And whenever anyone makes a thing or does a thing, I do like that.
Yes, I do like it when I do so like it when someone makes a thing or does
like it when someone makes or does a thing.